4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, 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 and welcome to another edition of Jet Eye Lunch Break Live. This is Justice, Equity, and Inclusion Strategies in 15 minutes or less. Let me just tell you, I'm always so excited to be doing these. I can't believe we are a month in. And let me just thank all of you who are loyal watchers and sharers of this content. It has really been amazing to get so much positive feedback and to hopefully help to enhance some of the things that you are seeing and experiencing in your workplace. We have talked about already so many diverse issues. And I admit last week I went a little bit off script, but we've dealt with everything from just the simple defining of what justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion are. We have talked about what acronyms we should use. We looked at and talked about from a hiring standpoint, choosing the best candidate and recognizing that the best candidate and the diverse candidate can be the same and usually are the same people. Because we're really just looking for top talent. We've talked about the disparities in this very polarizing environment that we work and live, and that even amongst our government between federal and state, we're getting very conflicting advice about what to do in the equity, diversity, and inclusion space. And then we've also dealt with just hiring and recruitment, some key tools that you can use to not only find but retain key staff. And so today we've done all that, and it dawned on me that one thing that I get asked a lot is, how do you know when you need a DEI consultant? I mean, a lot of organizations now have brought have introduced diversity, equity, and inclusion professionals into their workforce, hopefully in a senior role like a chief diversity officer or at a senior vice president level. Others are also looking at how they have diversity, equity, and inclusion competencies as part of other work sets or skills. Of course, that's valuable in human resources, but also valuable in both operations, programming, sales, marketing, and the like. And so we are seeing where more and more just the competencies around diversity, equity, inclusion are seen as an asset in almost any role that you might be hiring or looking for or employing in your organization. But still, and I definitely acknowledge that I have a bias here as a Jedi master. But still, there are times when you just need to bring in a professional. And I will answer this question of how do you know, in two parts. The first part I want to share is, you need an outside consultant, and in the same way, you need a consultant in any area. You need a consultant when your team, your organization lacks the competencies to either assess, develop, or implement diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies that are supporting your mission and goals. And so for me, just like any other workplace strategy, diversity, equity, and inclusion must, this is a mandatory statement, must be connected to the mission and goals of your company, your organization, or your institution. They cannot be separate. They must be aligned. And, this actually makes me remember that I haven't done a live on why that's important. So that may be an upcoming topic. But in this case, it's really about, you don't have those internal competencies, and you really need to bring in some extra temporary support. Now, Consultants, in my opinion, are not designed to be your forever people. They're designed to be your right now people and perhaps your transition people. And while that transition sometimes does take multiple years, the goal is to always be able to add support to your team, not lead your team. And that's really critical. So, now you know when you how you know you need a consultant. What are some of the signs that let you know it's time, that let you know I really need to think about this? Well, I'm gonna break this down three ways. The first way is, and this is the most obvious, is because you are experiencing a workforce crisis. And I have to say about 50% of my engagements come out of the fact that we are experiencing, our companies or organizations are experiencing a workforce crisis. And interestingly enough, just this morning, I read an article in the Atlantic called "The DEI Industry Needs to Check Its Privilege," written by, and I may mess up this person's name, Connor Findensdorf. And let me tell you, I was so upset because this person basically in this article makes the assessment that the boom, which it has been a boom in workplace culture and specifically DEI work in 2000 and 2001, is solely credited to the unfortunate incident of George Floyd. And while it is true that George Floyd definitely had an impact in our workplaces, it is also true that it is not George Floyd's incident alone. The reality is that in 2020 and in the years leading up to 2020, this country experienced and continues to experience an explosion, an exponential level of violent acts in communities that have been traditionally marginalized. This certainly includes Black communities, but is not limited to them. We've also seen a rise in hate crimes, and most importantly, violence that includes ethnic communities like Black people. It includes religious communities. It has even included communities based on their sexual orientation. And combined, these have had a real impact on people in this country, which then comes into the workplace. And so recognize that this crisis could include a couple of things. One, directly related, but let's not get it twisted. People are investing in this because it has an impact on what's happening in their organization, not just because of an external event that happened, even a horrific external event. So think about, for instance, companies that are experiencing increased grievance complaints, especially increased grievance complaints about workplace conditions, workplace attitudes, workplace behaviors. Oftentimes, and this can be influenced by external events, you're getting extreme pressure from staff or the public. And they're saying, we want more, that this is really a lot, that we're experiencing a high level of stress, depression, anxiety, etc. And it is directly related to how we feel like we're treated in our workplace environment. Or another level of workplace con could be a public, meaning it's in the press or social media, outing of unfavorable or discriminatory practices. So workplace crisis is one of the key signs that you can look toward to say, yeah, it might be time for us to think about workplace culture, and we might need a DEI consultant. The second sign that you can look for is looking internally. And when we think about what happens internally, what we're looking at is these are failure to meet goals or perspectives. So think about, for instance, an inability to attract top talent that represents a diverse demographic class or perspectives that you need in order to advance mission. And note here that I'm always thinking about talent and workforce in relationship to our missions and goals. Or perhaps you find yourself in a situation where you're failing to build high functioning teams in a trusted work environment. And this is especially true when you're trying to introduce talent that may not represent the traditional homogeneous environment that you've previously had. And now you've hired this diverse talent and you're finding that they're having a hard time creating high functioning, trusted teams because there's just not there's a lack of trust. And so these are kind of some internal signs that you may be observing. And if you are observing them, this may be a sign that it's time to hire in a DEI consultant. And the final condition that I'd like for you to think about and signs that it's time to think about your workplace culture is an external one. And this really gets to the bottom line. It is your inability. It could be pressure, public pressure from your customers, consumers, partners, or other stakeholders that the company and organization step up because customers and consumers in particular are much more savvy than they've ever been. And they want to feel good about where they spend their money. They want to feel good about the organizations that they choose to join and support. So they're asking better questions about who you are as an institution, who you are as an organization, what you represent as a company. And so these external pressures definitely lead to needing to have a robust diversity, equity, inclusion program that specifically looks at workplace culture, but also resonates out into how companies, organizations, institutions are showing up with their partners, customers, and other stakeholders. And so with that, whether it is a workplace crisis, whether it is an internal pressure or an external pressure, if you're finding that your company and your organization, your workplace is facing some, and I will be honest, usually if you're facing one, you're probably facing more than one of these challenges, then it may be time for you to hire a DEI consultant. And Holiday Advisors is just one of many very competent and consultants that may be a good fit for you. If you're interested in reaching out to me directly, please feel free to go to our website, which is holidayadvisors.com. And on the site, you'll find a way to get in touch with me and have a conversation. I will admit that most of my work intentionally works with organizations that are looking to change the world, not just for change the world. And so these tend to be advocacy or political type organizations, but I am part of a wide network of folks who provide competent diversity, equity, inclusion services for every industry of every type. And so if I am not the right fit, I am certainly, it would certainly be my pleasure to help you find someone that is. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Next week, we're going to talk about the fact that diversity, equity, and inclusion is more than race. And when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, we're not just talking about race. However, race is essential to recognizing and putting forth a diversity, equity, inclusion program that is competent. So while race is not the end all be all to diversity, equity, inclusion, it is critical. And we'll dig into that subject more and many others in future Jedi Lunch Break Live conversations. My name's Holly Holiday. I'm your Jedi Master, and I look forward to seeing you next Thursday, same time, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time for our next edition of Jedi Lunch Break Live. Bye. Did you enjoy this segment of Jedi Lunch Break Live? I'll be back next Thursday. Come on back and bring a friend.